Hello everybody, welcome to the nitrogen cycle, APES topic 1.5. So our objectives for today and essential knowledge is that the nitrogen cycle is the movement of atoms and molecules containing the element nitrogen between sources and sinks. Most of the reservoirs in which nitrogen compounds occur in the nitrogen cycle hold those compounds for relatively short periods of time, and that nitrogen fixation is the process in which atmospheric nitrogen is converted into a form of nitrogen, primarily ammonia, that is available for uptake by plants and that can be synthesized into plant tissue. The atmosphere is the major reservoir of nitrogen. So, like we were just saying, it's the movement of nitrogen around the biosphere among reservoir sources and sinks. Nitrogen goes through many chemical transformations as it travels through an ecosystem. And most reservoirs hold, like we just said, nitrogen for a relatively short period of time. Now, the importance of nitrogen. It's used to form amino acids, which are then the building blocks of proteins. And it's also used to form nucleic acids, which are the building blocks of DNA. It is also called a limiting nutrient, meaning that it's required for the growth of an organism, but available in lower quantities than other nutrients. So it's essential for the growth, but it's not as available to living things because it has to be in certain forms. So the presence of nitrogen greatly impacts the growth of plants, for example. Earth's atmosphere is 78% nitrogen by volume, and again, we're talking about nitrogen gas. So nitrogen fixation. So Earth's atmosphere is the largest nitrogen reservoir, and the vast majority of plants and algae can't use this form of nitrogen gas. So it uses the process of nitrogen fixation. This is where nitrogen gas is converted into forms of nitrogen that plants and algae can use, and occurs through biotic or living and abiotic or non-living processes. So let's take a look at these two categories. Here's some examples of the nitrogen cycle. So biotic nitrogen fixation. So this is where bacteria, also known as rhizobacteria, convert nitrogen gas into ammonia, which is rapidly converted into ammonium. So ammonia is NH3, ammonium, which is an ion, is NH4+. Ammonium can readily be used by plants and algae, and these organisms use the fixed nitrogen to synthesize their own tissues, like their physical beings, what they're made of, and excrete the excess, release it as waste. Nitrogen-fixing organisms include cyanobacteria, which are blue-green algae, primarily aquatic, meaning they're in the water, and secrete ammonium ions into the water, which are then taken up by aquatic plants and algae. Certain bacteria that live within the roots of legumes, such as peas, beans, and plants, also act as nitrogen-fixing organisms. The plant supplies the bacteria with sugars from photosynthesis, and the bacteria is going to help supply them with the nitrogen that they need. So it's a mutualistic relationship. It's mutualism. You can see an example here. Again, we're just going to look at glimpses of the overall cycle as we go through. The nitrogen-fixing bacteria is going to be in the roots of these various plants. The plant eventually dies. The decomposing material is then returned to the soil and continues on as part of the cycle. Now, it could also occur through abiotic means. So, firstly, nitrogen gas can be fixed in the atmosphere through lightning, or during combustion processes like fires or burning fossil fuels. So these convert nitrogen gas into nitrate, which is NO3-. Nitrate is carried to the Earth's surface by precipitation or rain when used by plants. It can also be fixed using human technology. So we as a species have developed techniques for nitrogen fixation into ammonia or nitrate through fossil fuel combustion, used as plant fertilizers. So these are nitrogen-based fertilizers. Humans fix more nitrogen than nature with this technology. And synthetic nitrogen fertilizers led to an increase in crop yields, specifically in the United States with corn. So again, we can look at the various forms of fixation. We have the biotic, which is bacteria and archaea. We have the abiotic, which is through lightning and industrial processes. Nitrification, conversion of ammonium into nitrite, NO2-, and then into nitrate. So it's conducted by specialized bacteria. Nitrite is not readily used by plants, but nitrate is. As we can see here in this process, we're taking the nitrites, ammonia, into nitrites, and then it's going to be made into nitrates. Ooh, there's a typo on that one. When plants take up nitrogen, ammonia, ammonium, nitrite, and nitrate, and incorporate the elements into their tissues, this is assimilation, meaning like becoming a part of something. Example, herbivores eat plants or algae, the nitrogen is assimilated into the tissues of the herbivores, and the rest is eliminated as waste. Mineralization. This is where fungal and bacterial decomposers break down the organic matter of dead bodies and waste products. These organic compounds are converted back into inorganic compounds such as NH4+, ammonium, sometimes called ammonification. So you may see that term used in like different questions and things like that. This is what they're talking about, is mineralization. Ammonium is taken up by plants or algae or can be converted into nitrite or nitrate through nitrification. Now, denitrification is a conversion of nitrate into nitrous oxide and eventually into nitrous gas. Nitrous gas is emitted into the atmosphere, and this is usually conducted by anaerobic bacteria. Now, that word anaerobic means that it's a bacteria that lives in an environment that lacks oxygen. They don't need oxygen or to function. These types of environments would be very waterlogged soils, especially in like wetlands, bottom of the oceans, lakes, and swamps. That's where we would find these anaerobic bacteria. The opposite of anaerobic would be aerobic. Now here is a little chart to help you guys remember which one is which. Nitrogen fixation, again, converts nitrogen gas from the atmosphere. It could be biotic or abiotic. Nitrifying bacteria through nitrification convert ammonium into nitrite and then into nitrate because, again, nitrate is more readily used by plants. Assimilation. Plants and algae take up either ammonium or nitrate. Herbivores assimilate nitrogen by eating the plants and algae, and again, it becomes part of their tissue. Mineralization/ammonification. Decomposers in soil and water break down biological nitrogen compounds into ammonium, NH4+. And then denitrification is where denitrifying bacteria in oxygen-poor or anaerobic soil and stagnant water convert nitrate into nitrous oxide and then eventually into nitrous gas and release it into the atmosphere. Now, humans have impacts on the nitrogen cycle just like they do with the carbon cycle or the phosphorus cycle. Nitrate is transported through soils via leaching, a process in which the dissolved molecules are transported through the soil via groundwater. We talked about this when we were doing terrestrial biomes. Adding nitrogen-based fertilizer to soils increases the nitrogen in the atmosphere in those areas. We find that through multiple studies. This means that this nitrogen can be deposited via rainfall in natural areas, which can then affect the flora and fauna there that are adapted to very specific conditions, and this can create some kind of disturbance or disruption that could favor some species and hurt others. Now, other experimental studies have looked at the effects of nitrogen levels within different environments. So, a study in the United States, they took 9 different terrestrial ecosystems, and they put some plots in them where they treated some plots with nitrogen fertilizers and others were left unfertilized, being the control groups for comparison. The results are pretty shocking. Adding nitrogen reduced the number of species in the plots by 48%. The reasoning is that some species could survive in the low nitrogen conditions and could not compete with larger plant species that thrived in high nitrogen conditions. So once you introduced a factor that favored certain species, especially ones that grow larger and faster, ones that could grow when there was lower nitrogen and there was a little more competition were now being basically killed off within those small little plots. Other studies have found significance in terms of nitrogen content in the ecosystem. Plant communities that have grown in low nitrogen conditions for millennia are now experiencing changes in species composition because of nitrogen in the atmosphere. This has also favored colonization by new species better adapted to the fertile soil. This is really just due to being that the rain is going to bring down more nitrogen into these ecosystems, like we were saying before, that did not have that amount of nitrogen, and that's going to have detrimental effect on the various flora, which then affect the various species of animals, the herbivores especially, and then the carnivores after that, due to the changes in concentration of these nutrients.